it is, the International Space Station, floating above the Earth. Yeah, here we go. This was early on, so they're piecing it together.
And what's the purpose of it?
Mainly just for observing the Earth and experiments, what it's like to live in space. They want to figure out, how best to live in space, because there's concern that we're going to destroy our planet. If you've heard liberals, they talk about that a lot, that man is going to pollute the world and destroy it. And so there's a desire to try to understand how to live in space so we can put some colonies out there, so when we kill ourselves off on planet Earth, human race will go on in these space stations. That was big in the 50s and 60s, but I'm not sure if it's that popular now. But it's mainly just experimentation. But here are some images of astronauts working on the space station, piecing it together. The early designs of the space stations were trying to live in a gravity-free environment, and that's the way the International Space Station is. When you're living there, you're floating around because there's no gravity. You can have like magnetic shoes and things help you stick to the sides. The problem is our bodies are not designed to live in a gravity-free environment. And so if you live there for very long, it can be detrimental. So they bring you home after you've been there for a few months. What are the things that happened? First of all, the blood begins to pool in your heart, because the way the body's designed, the working of your muscles, especially your large muscles such as your quadriceps, your thigh muscles, and your gluteus maximus, your rear end muscles or whatever, when you work those muscles, it helps get the blood pumped back to your heart. And so when you live in a gravity-free environment, you're not exercising those muscles. And so the blood gradually begins to build up in your heart, and eventually we'll call heart failure if you live there too long, unless you exercise like 5 hours a day. And that's what you see. They're exercising here. And so in the space station, they have to exercise, not just to keep yourself fit, but help get the blood cleansed back out of your heart. Another thing that happens in space is that there are particles that shoot out of the sun called cosmic rays, like little tiny bullets, ions. And our atmosphere is so thick, it captures most of those. But when you're out beyond the atmosphere, there's nothing to capture them, and they're so tiny they go right through the walls of the spaceship, and they go through your body. They're constantly going through your body. We don't have to put up with them that much on Earth because they're filtered out. However, in space, you get hit by lots of those, and most of them pass through their body without doing any damage, but ever so often those cosmic rays will hit a nerve or a cell and destroys it. And once you've been there long enough, you have a lot of cells that are destroyed. And they estimate, because basically aging is cell damage. Whenever you age, your body is not able to replace the cells that are being, cells are constantly being destroyed and rebuilt in your body. They estimate every 7 years you have a completely different set of cells in your body. You're not the same person now you were 7 years ago. That's another amazing thought, isn't it? Because what that means is that we're pretty much waves. Man is not a particle. He's a wave. Because we're different. We're changing constantly. And what makes us age is we're not able to keep up with the building new cells. It's replacing the ones that are destroyed. So this process, they say, ages you about 20% faster. It's essentially an aging process. You age 20% faster because cells are being destroyed faster than they can be replaced. That's the idea. Also, you get taller in space. So if you want to be an inch taller, go live a few months in space, come back, you're an inch taller. Of course, within the next 6 months, you go back to normal height. It's because since there's no gravity, all the tissues in your ankles, your knees, your hips, they expand. And that expansion of the tissues extends your height about an inch or so. But then as soon as you get back into gravity, it all compresses back down. And you go back to normal height. So this is the way early space stations were designed. The problem is this is not workable. You can't live like that. And so now most space stations look something like this. You have to create some kind of artificial gravity. And one of the best ways to create artificial gravity is to create centripetal force. That's the reason when you see sci-fi movies and they have a space station, it usually looks like a big bicycle wheel that turns, because that big bicycle wheel, as it's turning, is actually creating a centripetal force that acts outward. And so that would create gravity, or at least a sense of gravity. Isaac Newton developed the principles of motion. And one of his first principles of motion, that an object that's set in motion will move in a straight line unless it's acted on by another force. And so that means once something's in motion, it will want to continue in a straight line. And so if you have a spinning motion, it's going to constantly be acting outward. It's going to create an outward force, centripetal force. And that can mimic gravity. I remember when my mother's a horrible driver, she'll be driving and then just suddenly turn without slowing down. And so I can remember as a kid experiencing centripetal force all the time. Because I'm sitting there and suddenly, bam, I'm just up against the wall as she's turning, and I can feel that outward force. That force pushing me up against the outside of the car because my body wants to continue in a straight line, but my mom wants to turn my body in the car. And so I feel it pushing on the outside of the car. Well, that same pushing will create the sense of gravity and stick you to the ground. So if you're living in a space station, you get up in the morning and you feel really light, like you just lost 30 pounds that night while you're sleeping, what happened? What's that? Someone turned the wheel down. Someone flipped it down a few notches. What if you get up in the morning and it feels like you gained 60 pounds, like your feet are made out of lead? Someone's got it speeding. They turned it up. It's spinning really fast. This would be great. Everybody could lose weight just by slowing down. Your own special dieting program.
So if you got the object spinning, would it stay constant?
You would want it to stay constant.
No, I say, would it stay constant?
Well, as long as it's being powered, you have to have some, there is the second law of thermodynamics, that energy wears out, things run down. And so out in space, there wouldn't be any frictional drag, but there's still the second law of thermodynamics, that the amount of energy available to do work will decrease with time. So that means it would slow down even without any friction. And so you would have to have some kind of pulse power that would keep it pulsed up and keep it turning. And whether it's nuclear, coal-based, there would have to be some kind of energy. So anyway, you usually see space stations with these types of structures. Here's a very big one. But same principle.